The heat is a living, breathing predator, and tonight it is hungry. The abandoned lumber mill on the outskirts of the city has transformed into a furnace of twisting orange tongues and suffocating black soot. The roar of the fire is deafening, a chaotic symphony of splintering wood and collapsing steel beams. But through the haze one sound cuts through, a high-pitched, pathetic whimpering. Clara Corleone, a woman whose life has been defined by the crushing weight of survival, isn't supposed to be here. She isn't a hero. She's a runaway, a ghost in a city that eats the weak. But as a structural support groans and the ceiling begins to rain sparks, she doesn't turn back. She plunges deeper into the inferno. Her lungs burn with every intake of searing air, and her skin feels as though it's being kissed by 1,000 needles. She finds the source behind a fallen shipping crate. A wolf pup, its fur singed, its eyes wide with a terror that mirrors her own. Without a second of hesitation, Clara scoops the trembling creature into her arms, tucking it inside the thick, frayed leather of her jacket. She uses the last reserves of her strength to shield it, her movements sluggish, her vision swimming in pulses of gray and crimson. "Gotcha," she rasps, her voice lost to the furnace. She turns to run, but the floor beneath her gives way. She stumbles, collapsing against a soot-stained wall, her legs refusing to obey the commands of her mind. The smoke is closing in like a shroud. She is fading. The world is tilting, the roar of the fire dimming to a rhythmic, distant thrum. She closes her eyes, the warmth of the small creature against her chest the only thing keeping her tethered to reality. Hello everyone. Whether you're watching from the quiet suburbs of Australia, the vibrant streets of Mumbai, or the cozy corners of your own home, I am so happy to have you with us today. How are you doing? Are you ready for a story that burns with as much intensity as the fire in our opening? Before we see who emerges from the smoke, take a quick moment to hit that subscribe button and join our growing family. We thrive on these emotional, addictive journeys, and I'd love for you to be a part of it. Have you subscribed yet? If not, go ahead, it really helps us bring these stories to life. Are you ready to see who steps into the flames? Let's dive back in. Just as the final barrier of consciousness threatens to break, the heavy double doors of the mill are ripped from their hinges. The silhouette that enters isn't a firefighter. He moves with a predatory stillness that cuts through the chaos of the inferno. Alessandro Moretti. The name is a death sentence in the underworld, a title held by a man who has never known the meaning of mercy. He is the Mafia King, a man whose presence usually causes empires to tremble. He walks through the flames as if they are merely mist, his tailored coat pristine, his face an impenetrable mask of cold, sharp angles. He spots her, a huddled, broken figure against the charred wall, clutching something small to her chest. Alessandro doesn't shout. He doesn't panic. He reaches her in 2 strides, his large, powerful hands gripping her shoulders. As he lifts her, he feels the unnatural heat of her skin and sees the way she is trying to protect the animal in her arms. Clara stirs, her eyes fluttering open to reveal a gaze of defiance that even the smoke cannot dim. She doesn't scream. She doesn't beg. She simply whispers, "The pup. The pup." Alessandro looks down at the wolf, then back at the woman. For a man who has spent a lifetime measuring the cost of every human life, this moment is a glitch in his cold, calculated world. He sees the sheer, reckless courage it took for her to enter this hell. He sees a fire within her that rivals his own darkness. "You're a fool," he says, his voice a low, gravelly vibration that feels like stone grinding on stone. "Maybe," she gasps, her hand slipping from his arm as darkness finally takes her. "But it's still breathing." Alessandro pulls her tightly against his chest, the wolf pup tucked securely between them, and turns back toward the inferno's exit. He doesn't know who she is, but as he steps out into the cool, biting night air, he realizes one thing. He didn't just save a stranger. He has just brought a spark into his kingdom, and he has a feeling it's going to burn everything he thought he knew to the ground. Who is Clara and why was she in the mill? And what happens when the Mafia King's world of shadow is invaded by the light of a woman who values life above her own safety? The clinical silence of the Moretti estate is a jarring contrast to the roar of the inferno. It's a place of polished marble, hushed footsteps, and security systems that could repel an army. Alessandro stands by the window of his private infirmary, his hands clasped behind his back, watching the moon rise over his sprawling grounds. He is a man of calculated architecture. Every decision, every alliance, and every execution has its place. But for the last 12 hours his focus has been entirely on the woman in the guest bed. Clara Corleone is a mystery wrapped in a shroud of quiet defiance. She isn't the usual type of person Alessandro finds in his orbit. His world is populated by sycophants, enemies, and ruthless business partners. He's none of those. When the doctor finally emerges, he wipes his brow, looking uneasy. "She's resilient, Don Moretti," the doctor says. "But she's been living on the edge of exhaustion for a long time. Malnutrition, severe smoke inhalation, and signs of prolonged physical strain. Whoever she is, she hasn't had a soft day in her life." Alessandro nods, dismissing the man with a curt wave. He turns his attention back to the bed. The wolf pup is curled up on a velvet cushion by her feet, its small rhythmic breathing a testament to the life she chose to save over her own. This is the character foundation of the woman who has disrupted his empire. Alessandro, raised in a world where everything has a price, cannot reconcile her actions. Why would a runaway, someone who clearly has nothing, risk her life for an animal? It's not just heroism, it's an emotional depth that Alessandro himself hasn't felt in decades. He remembers a time long ago, before the Mafia King moniker became his only identity, when he too protected the innocent. But he buried that boy beneath the cold, hard reality of the syndicate. "Who are you?" he murmurs, his voice barely audible. Just then his most trusted advisor Lorenzo Valenza knocks and enters. Lorenzo is a man of sharp features and even sharper instincts. The kind of person who views human emotion as a tactical liability. "The security sweep is complete, Alessandro," Lorenzo says, his eyes darting to the sleeping woman. "No records. No prints in the national database. It's like she appeared out of thin air. But the fire at the mill? It wasn't an accident. Our sources say a local gang was using it to store illegal contraband. They'll be coming to look for their property, or the person who cost them $1 million in product." Alessandro's eyes narrow, shifting from the woman to his advisor. "Let them come. No one touches the guest in my house." "With all due respect," Lorenzo says, stepping closer, "she is a wild card. A liability. We have enough wars on our hands without inviting a stray into the den. What do you see in her, Alessandro? A mascot?" Alessandro doesn't answer immediately. He walks to the bedside and looks down at Clara. Even in her sleep, her brow is furrowed, as if she is still bracing for an impact that isn't coming. There is a raw, jagged vulnerability to her that, to a man as controlled as Alessandro, feels like a magnetic pull. "I see a fire, Lorenzo," Alessandro says, his voice cold. "And I have a feeling that if we try to extinguish it, it's going to burn us both." Clara's backstory is one of quiet, persistent trauma. She was a girl who learned early that if you want something to survive, you have to be the one to hold it together. She has no family, no backing, just a relentless internal compass that pulls her toward the broken things of the world. She is the embodiment of everything Alessandro has spent his life trying to suppress in himself. But as the night deepens, Clara begins to stir. Her eyes open, not with the confusion of a patient, but with the sudden, sharp alertness of someone who expects danger. "Where?" She starts, her voice raspy. She tries to sit up, but the weight of her injuries pins her back. She sees Alessandro standing by the light of the moon, and her gaze doesn't soften. It sharpens. "You're in the Moretti estate," Alessandro says, his tone neutral. "You saved a wolf pup from a fire. You almost died doing it." Clara looks at the pup, sees it safe on the cushion, and then looks back at him. Her breathing slows and a strange, haunted calm settles over her features. "I didn't ask to be saved." Alessandro walks to the bedside, his tall frame looming over her. "You didn't have to. You did it anyway. That makes you an anomaly, Clara. And in my world, anomalies need to be explained." As their eyes lock, the emotional focus shifts. It's not just a king and a stray. It's a recognition of two souls who have been living in the smoke for too long. For the first time, Alessandro doesn't see a subject to be interrogated. He sees a mirror reflecting a part of his life he thought he'd killed. "I'm not a liability," Clara says, her voice steady. "I'm beginning to think," Alessandro replies, leaning in, "that you're exactly the kind of trouble I've been looking for." The air in the room shifts. The danger isn't just external, from the gangs looking for their property. It's internal. Because for the Mafia King, letting someone inside his walls is the greatest risk of all. The calm of the infirmary is shattered not by an explosion, but by the subtle, frantic chirping of the security monitors. Alessandro's wrist-mounted interface pulses a rhythmic deep violet, the universal signal for a breach in the outer perimeter. He looks at Clara, who is already shifting, her body coiled like a spring despite her injuries. She doesn't ask for protection, she asks for the nature of the threat. "They found me," she whispers, her eyes locking onto the screen. "The Black Iron Syndicate. They didn't care about the lumber mill, Alessandro. They cared about what I found in the basement before I set the fire." Alessandro's composure holds, but a flicker of cold intensity ignites in his gaze. He reaches to his bedside drawer, pulling out a sleek custom-fitted holster. "You didn't just save a wolf, Clara. You stole something, didn't you?" Clara doesn't deny it. She reaches under the pillow, pulling out a small metallic data drive, singed at the edges but miraculously intact. This contains the shipment manifests for the entire syndicate. They were smuggling more than just contraband. They were moving people, Alessandro. Children. I couldn't let them burn the evidence, or the evidence burn with the building. The room drops to a sub-zero temperature. Alessandro, the man who controls the city's trade, is no stranger to the darkness of the underworld, but the syndicate's involvement in human trafficking is a line even he refuses to cross. The silence stretches, thick with the weight of impending war. "You brought a target into my house," Alessandro says, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "You knew they would hunt you." "I knew you were the only one they feared enough to hold them back," Clara counters, her voice gaining strength as she finds her footing. "And I was right." Suddenly, the front of the estate erupts. The sound of high-caliber fire tears through the night, the heavy thud of projectiles hitting the reinforced stone walls. The syndicate hasn't come for negotiations. They've come for a total liquidation. Alessandro grabs Clara by the arm, hauling her out of the bed. He doesn't treat her like an invalid, he treats her like a soldier. He thrusts a handgun into her palm, a cold, heavy weight. "Can you shoot?" "I know how to survive," she says, her grip steady. They rush into the hallway where Lorenzo is already orchestrating the defense. The air is filled with the smell of spent shells and the frantic shouting of guards. Alessandro moves with the grace of a panther, his movements fluid and efficient. He takes a position behind a marble column, signaling Clara to stay low. The syndicate mercenaries, clad in tactical black, surge into the grand foyer, their laser sights painting the walls. They are well equipped, using high-frequency jammers that render the estate's automated turrets useless. It is a surgical strike. They want the drive. Clara yells over the cacophony of gunfire. If they get it, the names on that list disappear. Alessandro sees the trap. The mercenaries aren't just attacking. They are corralling them toward the central atrium, a tactical disadvantage with no cover. He looks at Clara, then at the wolf pup, which is cowering behind a suit of armor, ears flattened. "We need a distraction," Alessandro shouts, his mind already calculating the variables. "Clara, you take the high ground, the gallery stairs. I'll draw their fire toward the conservatory. Meet me at the extraction point in the basement." "That's a suicide mission." Clara protests. Alessandro stops, pinning her with a look that is terrifyingly sincere. "I am a king of this city, Clara. If I die on my own terms. But you have a fire that needs to keep burning." Before she can respond, he leaps into the foyer, his dual handguns barking, forcing the mercenaries to scatter. He is a whirlwind of lethal precision, drawing the heat of the entire syndicate assault. Clara hesitates for only a second, the weight of the data drive and the life of the pup heavy in her heart. She realizes the inciting incident wasn't just the fire. It was the moment she crossed Alessandro's threshold. Her life of hiding is over. She is now an active participant in a war for the city's soul. As she races toward the gallery, she hears the roar of a heavy weapon, a mounted machine gun tearing through the conservatory glass. Her heart hammers, a mixture of adrenaline and a blooming, terrifying concern for the man who just chose to play a decoy for her sake. She reaches the gallery and looks down, firing with a precision that speaks of years of hidden struggle. She watches Alessandro dodge behind a massive potted palm, his coat stained with dark crimson droplets. He looks up, catching her eye for a fraction of a second amidst the chaos. A strange, fleeting smile, not of a king but of a man finally feeling alive, touches his lips. The fire has been lit. And now there is no going back for either of them. The grand foyer of the Moretti estate has transformed into a war zone. Glass shards from the shattered conservatory rain down like diamonds, glistening in the moonlight, while the rhythmic thud-thud-thud of suppressed fire keeps the air vibrating with death. Clara reaches the gallery landing, her breath hitching as she spots Alessandro below. He is pinned down behind a marble pillar, his coat shredded by a barrage of lead. Every movement he makes is precise, calculated, but he is running out of space. He isn't just fighting for the data drive, he is holding the line for her. Lorenzo, move the flank. Alessandro barks into his comms, his voice steady despite the blood trickling down his forearm. Keep them away from the east wing. Claire doesn't retreat. Instead, she scans the gallery for an exit. She spots an industrial service elevator, a relic from when the estate was a private manor, tucked behind a heavy tapestry. She knows if she goes to the basement alone, she abandons the only person who has ever truly seen her potential. She turns, her jaw set, and begins to navigate the complex rafters of the gallery, using the high ground to pin down the syndicate's advancing line. She is a ghost, moving through the shadows, her handgun barking with surgical intent. Each shot is a message. I am not a victim. I am the hunter. Down in the foyer, Alessandro catches the rhythmic pattern of her fire. His eyes widen for a split second, then narrow with a mix of pride and agonizing worry. He realizes she hasn't fled. She has stayed to fight with him. The tension between them, which had been a slow-burning spark, is now a wildfire. Through the smoke and the chaos, their eyes lock across the expanse of the room. It is a moment of intense, raw connection. A silent communication that says more than 1,000 words. Suddenly, a group of mercenaries breaks through the service door, cutting off Alessandro's path to the east wing. They are heavily armored, wielding riot shields that deflect his fire. They are closing in, a pincer movement designed to break the king. Clara, get out of here. Alessandro roars, realizing the danger she is in if she remains exposed. I don't leave my own behind, she screams back, vaulting over the gallery railing. She lands in a crouch, sliding across the polished marble floor and skidding into cover beside Alessandro. For a heartbeat they are side by side, their backs against the cold stone of the pillar. The wolf pup, sensing the danger, lets out a small, sharp yip from the safety of a nearby alcove. You are infuriatingly brave, Alessandro whispers, his voice low, his eyes scanning the corridor. And completely dangerously reckless. And you are entirely too arrogant for a man who's bleeding, she retorts, pressing a firm hand against his wounded arm to slow the flow. The proximity is electric. Between the adrenaline of combat and the proximity of their bodies, the rising tension reaches a fever pitch. He realizes that for all his power, for all his soldiers, it is this woman, this stranger from the fire, who is the only thing keeping him grounded. If we make it out of this, Alessandro says, his gaze searching hers, I want to know the truth. Who are you really? And why does the syndicate want you dead so badly? I'm someone who was tired of watching the world burn, Clara says, her eyes flashing with a fierce, unwavering light. And I think you're someone who was just waiting for a reason to stop watching and start fighting. Before Alessandro can respond, a flashbang grenade detonates in the foyer, blinding them. The air goes still, then follows the deafening rush of footsteps. The mercenaries are charging. Alessandro grabs Clara's hand, his fingers interlocking with hers. A firm, desperate promise, and they move as one. They surge forward, not away from the danger but directly into it. The tension isn't just in the fight. It's in the growing realization that they are no longer two individuals fighting for survival. They are two halves of a storm. But as they break through the foyer's defenses, the false clue reveals itself. The mercenaries aren't just here for the data drive. One of the lead assailants whispers into his comms, "The king is compromised. Initiate the secondary protocols. Burn the estate." The ceiling joists above them begin to groan with the weight of hidden incendiary charges. The rising tension has shifted. They aren't just fighting for the drive anymore. They are fighting to survive the very house that has become their fortress. The air in the grand foyer changes instantly. It goes from the sharp metallic tang of gunfire to the sickening sweet scent of accelerant. Alessandro, his senses honed by decades of warfare, freezes. He feels the vibrations beneath his boots. He hears the faint rhythmic ticking behind the wainscoting. They aren't just killing us, Alessandro growls, his grip on Clara's hand tightening. They're erasing us. The midpoint revelation strikes like a physical blow. As they sprint toward the conservatory, the entire floor of the foyer drops, not by accident but by a timed demolition. The grand staircase collapses into a chasm of fire, cutting off the exit to the main gates. The syndicate mercenaries are retreating not in fear, but with the chilling efficiency of those who know the trap is sprung. Alessandro maneuvers Clara into the heavy-duty vault room behind his study, slamming the lead-line door shut just as the shockwave of the first internal explosion hits. The room shakes, dust raining from the ceiling like ash, and for a moment the silence is deafening. Clara gasps, clutching her side where the impact of the fall bruised her ribs. She looks at the screen in the vault, which displays a feed from the estate's external cameras. The mansion is a perimeter of controlled demolition. Why would they do this? Clara asks, her voice trembling. The data drive. If they blow the house, they lose the evidence. Alessandro's face is a mask of cold, hard realization. He walks to his desk and pulls out a hidden ledger from behind a portrait. He flips it open, his finger tracing a name he hasn't seen in years. They don't want the drive, Clara, he says, his voice dangerously low. They want the identity of the person who leaked the manifest. And the only person with access to those files was the daughter of the man who started the Black Iron Syndicate. Clara freezes. What are you talking about? Your father, Alessandro says, his eyes meeting hers with a devastating clarity. The man who raised you in the shadows, the man who taught you how to survive, he was the founder of the syndicate. He didn't die in an accident. He was executed for wanting to turn state's evidence. You aren't just a girl who found a drive. You are the only person who holds the biological key to the syndicate's private servers. The truth washes over Clara, and the world tilts on its axis. Her entire life, the isolation, the constant movement, the feeling that she was always running from something she couldn't name, it all clicks into place. She wasn't just a survivor, she was a target, a living, breathing key to her father's legacy. I'm not. Clara starts, her voice breaking. I was just a kid. He never told me. He was trying to protect you, Alessandro says, stepping closer. The wall between them, the wall of King and Stray, shatters. He sees her not as a liability, but as a person whose life has been built on a foundation of lies. He died to hide you, and you've spent your life walking toward the fire. The revelation doesn't just change the plot, it changes the stakes. It's no longer about a data drive or a wolf pup. It's about a bloodline. Suddenly, the vault door begins to buckle. The intense heat of the surrounding fire is warping the hinges. We have to go, Clara says, her eyes hardening. The vulnerability is gone, replaced by a cold, sharpened resolve. She pulls the drive from her pocket, looking at it with newfound hatred. If I'm the key, then I'm the one who ends it. If they want to erase me, they have to face me. Alessandro looks at her, and for the first time he doesn't see a woman he needs to protect. He sees a partner. He sees the fire he recognized in her from the very beginning. Then we don't run, Alessandro says, drawing his weapon and checking the magazine. We burn the syndicate to the ground. If you're the key to their kingdom, let's make sure it's a kingdom of ash. The betrayal and revelation pulse through the room. They are no longer hiding in the vault. They are plotting their counterstrike. Alessandro shares his contingency plans, the secret tunnels beneath the estate, the sleeper cells he has embedded in the city's heart, and the one weapon he swore he'd never use. A localized EMP that will black out the syndicate's entire communications grid. As they stand together, the heat of the fire raging outside becomes an afterthought. The real intensity is the connection between them, the raw, electric passion of two people who have found their purpose in the chaos of the end. Together? Clara asks, her hand resting on the vault door. Always, Alessandro replies, his voice a vow. The door screams as it starts to peel open. The fire is coming for them, but for the first time in their lives they are ready to meet it. The vault door groans, not from heat, but from the sudden jarring impact of an industrial battering ram. The steel screams as it bends inward, and the smell of ozone and sulfur floods the chamber. Alessandro and Clara move in perfect, terrifying synchronization. As the hinges finally give way, they don't retreat. They launch two figures wrapped in smoke and lethal intent. But the syndicate didn't just bring muscle. They brought a specialist. Standing amidst the flames in the corridor is Viktor Kovic, the man known as the Eraser. He is lean, scarred, and holds a double-barreled shotgun that looks like it belongs on a battleship. He doesn't fire immediately. He watches them with the detached hunger of a predator that has finally cornered its prey. "The girl," Kovic says, his voice a rhythmic wet rasp. "The king." What a poetic way to end the lineage. The fighting is brutal, claustrophobic, and desperate. Alessandro dives into the fray, his blade flashing in the dim light of the burning corridor, but Kovic is faster than any opponent he has faced before. With a sickening thud, Kovic lands a heavy metal-clad boot into Alessandro's chest, sending him crashing into the wall. The impact is so severe that Alessandro doesn't immediately stand. "Alessandro!" Clara screams, her voice cracking. She turns to help, but Kovic is on her. He backhands her with the barrel of his weapon, sending her sprawling across the searing hot floorboards. She hits the wall, the breath punched out of her, the data drive skittering across the floorboards toward the gaping, fire-licked hole where the floor collapsed. "The drive, girl," Kovic commands, stepping over Alessandro's prone body. "Give it to me or I watch your king bleed out while the roof comes down on your heads." The darkest hour is absolute. Alessandro is struggling to regain consciousness, his vision swimming, his breath coming in shallow, ragged hitches. The roof above them is groaning, the structural integrity of the wing compromised by the demolition charges. Clara looks at the data drive, the weapon that could destroy the syndicate, lying inches away from the edge of the abyss. She looks at Alessandro, the man who stepped into the fire to save her. And she looks at Kovic, who is now standing over her, his gun leveled at her temple. She has no leverage. She has no weapon. She is trapped, beaten, and watching the man she has come to love fading into the darkness. "You were a mistake," Kovic sneers, his finger tightening on the trigger. "A ghost that refused to stay dead. But tonight the fire cleanses everything." Clara's heart isn't beating for fear. It's beating with a desperate, crushing sorrow. She looks at the wolf pup which had followed them, shivering in the corner of the vault, its eyes wide with a canine's instinct for impending doom. "I failed," she thinks, the despair washing over her like the black smoke. "I was supposed to be the key, but all I did was lead the destroyer to the only person who cared." She closes her eyes, waiting for the cold click of the hammer, waiting for the darkness to pull her under. "Wait," a voice croaks. It's Alessandro. He isn't standing, but he's clutching the edge of a heavy marble pedestal. With a grunt of agonizing effort, he heaves the weight not at Kovic, but at the overhead chandelier that still hangs precariously by a single frayed chain directly above the structural weakness in the floor. Clang! The pedestal hits the chain. The chandelier drops. It doesn't hit Kovic. It hits the floorboards beneath him, the very spot that was already weakened by the explosions. The floor gives way. Kovic loses his footing, his scream cut short as he plunges into the dark, roaring furnace of the sublevel. But as the floor collapses, Clara is caught in the momentum. She slides toward the edge. Alessandro lunges, his fingers catching her wrist, but his own shoulder is dislocated, his body broken. He's dangling over the precipice, holding her weight with one hand, his face etched in a mask of pure, unadulterated agony. "Let go," Clara sobs, looking down into the hellish glow of the fire below. "Alessandro, let go. You'll fall with me." "I told you," Alessandro gasps, his knuckles turning white, his eyes fixed on hers with a fierce, terrifying intensity. "I don't leave my own behind." The roof above them begins to buckle, the final support beam snapping like a toothpick. The house is coming down. They are suspended between the fire below and the collapse above, trapped in the eye of a dying empire. The despair is absolute. They are out of ammunition, out of time, and out of strength. "Is this it?" Clara whispers, the heat singeing her skin. Alessandro looks at her, and even in the face of death, his smile is defiant. "It's not the end, Clara. It's the only way to be free." As the floor tilts further, he pulls her upward with his final, shredding ounce of strength, not to safety but toward the only exit left, a plunge into the unknown. "I'm on the edge of my seat. They're hanging by a thread. Do you think they'll survive the fall?" What do you think is waiting for them in the dark beneath the estate? Let me know your craziest theories in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to be the first to see the final act. We are entering the turning point. Are you ready? The descent is a blurred scream of splintering wood and searing heat. Alessandro and Clara hit the sublevel floor, a subterranean space that was once the estate's original centuries-old wine cellar. They roll, shielding each other instinctively as the remaining ceiling of the grand house above them disintegrates, burying the entrance in a tomb of burning debris. They are trapped 3 stories beneath the earth. Alessandro. Clara scrambles to him, her hands trembling as she searches for a pulse. He's alive but barely. His breath is a shallow rattle and his left shoulder is a mess of dislocated bone and torn muscle. But his eyes, those fierce, dark eyes, snap open the moment she touches him. He reaches up, his fingers brushing a smudge of soot from her cheek. Alive, he rasps. I told you. I don't leave my own behind. The turning point is not just their survival, it's the shift in their reality. As the fire above starts to choke out the oxygen, Alessandro realizes that this cellar isn't just a grave, it's the nexus. His grandfather, the original architect of the Moretti fortune, had built this space to withstand a literal apocalypse. In the dim, flickering light of a flickering backup emergency bulb, Alessandro sees the wall carvings. They aren't just decorations. They are blueprints of the city's underground tunnels, the secret conduits that the syndicate uses to move their illicit cargo. Clara, he says, his voice gaining a sudden desperate clarity. The drive. Do you still have it? She reaches into her jacket, pulling out the singed metallic device. It's warm, its small blue light still blinking with a defiant, steady pulse. It's intact. The syndicate didn't just want to erase you, Alessandro says, his mind racing with the tactical advantage they suddenly hold. They wanted to stop the data from reaching the one person who can bring them down, the federal prosecutor. My family's rival. I've spent years fighting him, but he's the only one with the authority to burn the syndicate to the root. Clara looks at the drive, then at Alessandro. The crucial realization hits them both. To survive, they don't need to win a war of bullets. They need to win a war of information. I can bypass their encryption, Clara says, her eyes narrowing as she studies the drive's interface. I spent my father's final years learning how to hide these files. I can broadcast them. Not just to the prosecutor but to every major news outlet in the city. If I expose them all at once, they can't kill us all. But the blackout, Alessandro notes, a painful grimace as he sits up. My EMP protocol. If we trigger it, the syndicate's comms go down, but so do the alarms in the city's detention centers. It'll cause chaos. It'll cause the truth to come out, Clara counters, her voice resonant with a new, dangerous strength. We're the only ones left who know where the bodies are buried. Are we going to play by their rules or are we going to break the game? Alessandro looks at her, really looks at her, and sees the woman he found in the fire. He sees the internal strength that was always there, waiting for the right moment to flare. Break the game, he agrees, a faint, proud smile touching his lips. He reaches into a hidden panel behind a wine rack, revealing a manual emergency override. It's a physical switch that connects to the city's power grid. We need a signal, Alessandro says. We're too deep underground for a satellite uplink. Clara looks at the wolf pup, which is sniffing at a grate in the wall, a vent that leads to the old city drainage system. The drainage line, Clara says. It leads to the city's central hub. If we can get the drive to the hub's terminal, it will auto-upload to the entire municipal network. The romantic interests reunite, with a deeper understanding. They aren't just 2 people running for their lives. They are 2 sides of a singular, vengeful coin. Alessandro takes Clara's hand, his grip firm, grounded. We are going to walk out of this, Clara. We are going to expose them. And then, he whispers, his voice dropping to a low, intimate promise. We are going to have a life that doesn't involve smoke and guns. Clara leans into him, their foreheads touching. The hope and courage are palpable. They have found the key to their salvation and they are ready to turn it. Together, she says. As they crawl into the dark, narrow tunnel, leaving the ruins of the Moretti estate behind, they don't look like victims. They look like a storm about to break. The city's central utility hub is a brutalist cathedral of humming servers and tangled fiber optic cables. a cold, sterile heart beating beneath the bustling streets. Alessandro and Clara move through the darkness of the subterranean tunnels like ghosts. Alessandro is wounded, his movements pained, but his focus is absolute. Beside him, Clara is a vision of cold, calculated purpose. She knows exactly where they are going. They burst into the central hub, the massive server racks glowing with a rhythmic, pulsing blue light. But they aren't alone. Standing by the main terminal is Lorenzo Valenza. Alessandro stops dead. The air in the room turns toxic with the weight of the betrayal. Lorenzo, his oldest friend and advisor, holds a suppressed pistol, his face devoid of the loyalty Alessandro had trusted for 20 years. "I didn't think you'd make it out of the fire, Alessandro," Lorenzo says, his voice disturbingly calm. "I really didn't. I had to trigger the demolition myself once Kovic went dark. You were supposed to be buried under the Moretti pride." "Why?" Alessandro's voice is a low, dangerous rumble. He doesn't move to draw his weapon. He stands his ground, shielding Clara behind him. "We built this empire together." "You built an empire on codes of honor that don't exist anymore," Lorenzo sneers. "The syndicate offered me the city. They offered me a future where I wasn't just the king's shadow. They offered me the seat at the head of the table. And all I had to do was erase you and the girl who carried the key." Clara steps out from behind Alessandro, her gaze locked on Lorenzo's weapon. She doesn't look afraid. She looks disgusted. "You're not a king, Lorenzo. You're just a scavenger waiting for a dying beast to drop. And you," Lorenzo points the gun directly at her, "are the reason this is all happening." He pulls the trigger. The sound is a muted thwip in the cavernous room. But Alessandro is faster. He moves with a desperation that defies his injuries, tackling Clara out of the line of fire. The bullet grazes his shoulder, but he doesn't stop. He slams into Lorenzo, the force of their collision sending them both skidding across the slick concrete floor. The fight is primal. It is the clash of two men who know every move the other will make. They are evenly matched in technique, but Alessandro is fighting for more than power. He is fighting for the future he sees in Clara's eyes. Clara doesn't watch. She lunges for the terminal. She slots the data drive into the override port. Her fingers fly across the keys, bypassing the syndicate's firewall with a speed that is almost supernatural. "Uploading," she shouts, her voice echoing through the hub. "Stop her." Lorenzo screams, abandoning the fight with Alessandro and turning his gun toward the terminal. Alessandro doesn't let him. He tackles Lorenzo from behind, pinning him to the floor. The gun skitters away, spinning toward the center of the room. It stops inches from the wolf pup, which is sitting in the middle of the hub, watching the violence with unnerving golden eyes. The pup snarls, a sound far too deep for its small frame, and pounces on the weapon, skidding it away from Lorenzo's reach. The upload is at 90%. Claire cries. Lorenzo struggles, his face turning purple, but Alessandro's grip is like a vice. "It's over, Lorenzo. The names, the manifests, the human trafficking, it's all hitting the wires right now." Lorenzo laughs, a broken, manic sound. "You think you've won? The syndicate doesn't lose, Alessandro. Even if they fall, they'll take the city down with them." "Not today," Alessandro says. With a final, decisive movement, he flips Lorenzo and pins him, subduing him with a chokehold until he goes limp. Clara slams the enter key. Upload complete. The servers in the hub begin to wail. The screens throughout the room flicker from blue to red, then to black. Outside, above the streets, every digital billboard, every news feed, and every private communication device in the city begins to display the files. The names of the syndicate leadership, the location of the hidden cells, the proof of their atrocities. It is all broadcast to the public in a flood of unignorable truth. The most surprising and satisfying twist happens in the silence that follows. The city police, the federal agents, and the local press are already swarming the syndicate's known hideouts before the upload even finishes. The exposure is total. The king has brought the truth and the city has risen to meet it. Alessandro staggers toward Clara. He is battered, bleeding, and exhausted, but as he reaches her, he pulls her into his arms. "We did it," Clara whispers, her head resting against his chest. "We did," Alessandro replies, looking at the screens that are now flooded with the news of the syndicate's collapse. "The king is dead, Clara. And the man who found you in the fire is all that's left." The room is silent, save for the hum of the servers and the soft breathing of the wolf pup at their feet. They have triumphed. The syndicate is finished, and the shadow that hung over their lives has been burned away by the harsh, unrelenting light of the truth. I'm breathless. That was intense. Did you expect Lorenzo to be the traitor? I definitely didn't. And the wolf pup saving the day? Panic. If you're loving how our heroes took down the Empire, smash that like button. We are at the finish line, my friends. Are you ready for the final, most satisfying conclusion? The morning light that filters into the central hub isn't the harsh, artificial glow of servers anymore. It's the soft amber light of a new day, pouring through the shattered ventilation grates. Above them, the city is a hive of activity. Sirens wail, but they aren't for the king's enemies. They are the sound of justice finally taking root. Alessandro and Clara emerge from the utility hub into the cool, crisp air of the morning. The streets are already filling with people. Citizens stopping to look at the massive digital screens that are still scrolling through the syndicate's dark history. Alessandro stops on the sidewalk, his arm held in a makeshift sling made from his ruined coat. He isn't the Mafia King anymore. He is just a man who has lost his throne and, in doing so, gained his life. The prosecutor's office is already on the scene, Clara says, gesturing to the heavy, armored transport vehicles now cordoning off the block. The syndicate is finished. They can't hide in the dark anymore. Alessandro turns to her, his gaze intense. The grime of the fire, the blood of the battle, and the exhaustion of their journey have stripped away all the layers of pretense. He takes her hand, not the hands of a king and his prize, but the hands of two survivors who have walked through hell together. What happens now, Alessandro? She asks, her voice soft but steady. Everything, he replies. I have no estate. I have no empire. I have no name in the underworld. I am starting from zero. Clara looks at the wolf pup, which is trotting along by her boots, its coat finally clean, its eyes no longer wild with fear but bright with a newfound curiosity. Zero isn't nothing, she says. Zero is just a clean slate. They walk away from the chaotic scene of the arrest, moving toward the edge of the city where the morning sun is hitting the hills. They don't look back at the broken empire they left behind. Alessandro had spent his life building walls, fearing that someone would tear them down. Now he realizes that the walls were never the source of his strength. The strength was in the ability to protect, and he had spent his life protecting the wrong things. Now he has someone real to protect, and for the first time he knows he is safe in return. In the months that follow, the city begins to heal. The archives Clara released become the cornerstone of a massive reform. The Moretti name becomes a whisper of the past, a story told in hushed tones about a king who vanished into the fire. Alessandro and Clara settle into a quiet coastal town, miles away from the smoke and the concrete. There is a small house with a garden, a deck that overlooks the sea, and a wolf who has grown into a loyal, steadfast protector. They don't live in hiding, they live in peace. There are no more shootouts, no more secret tunnels, no more Mafia Kings. Just the sound of the ocean, the warmth of the sun, and the quiet comfort of a life earned through fire. On a warm afternoon, Alessandro sits on the porch, his shoulder fully healed, watching Clara tend to the herbs in the garden. She looks up, catching his eye, and smiles. A genuine, radiant smile that he knows he will never tire of seeing. He realizes then that he had been searching for power his entire life, never understanding that real power wasn't control. It was the freedom to love without conditions. He had risked his life for a woman he didn't know, and in doing so he had found the man he was always meant to be. You're staring, Clara calls out, laughing as she brushes dirt from her hands. I'm just enjoying the view, he says, leaning back in his chair. I've spent a long time in the dark, Clara. I think I'll stay right here in the light for a while. As the sun begins to set over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and deep violet, the story of the king and the woman from the fire reaches its final, beautiful cadence. They are no longer defined by their pasts, nor by the roles the world imposed upon them. They are defined by their choice to survive, to fight, and ultimately to choose each other. The fire that started it all has long since burned out, leaving behind not just ash, but the foundation for a future they never dared to imagine. And that is where our journey ends. From the heat of the lumber mill to the heart of the city's central hub, we've witnessed a transformation that only true courage can spark. If you've enjoyed this emotional roller coaster, please leave a comment below. I want to know what you think of their new life. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel and hit that bell to join us for our next epic adventure. Thank you for being part of this ride, for every like, every comment, and every share. You make these stories possible. Until next time, stay brave, stay hopeful, and never be afraid to step into the fire if it means saving what matters. Thank you for watching.